I might as well begin. Hi, everyone. I'm Professor Keith Mayerson, Chair of Painting, Drawing, and Printmaking at USC, and the teacher of this capstone class. I want to welcome you guys to the Zoom walkthrough webinar of our USC Roski Senior Capstone Exhibition. We're so pleased and proud to be introducing this amazing group of 16 students, literally at the capstone of their USC careers. Artists, designers, and great critical thinkers, these fantastic students have been working, creating, and studying hard for their 4 years with us at Roski and have achieved so much during their time here. To be a great artist, every work and every show needs to be even better than their best. So here we have the latest masterpieces by these fantastic creators in their latest and greatest show, literally the capstone of their USC careers. I'm going to share my screen. Originally, we were going to have an independent show in a brick and mortar space in downtown LA near our Mateo space, the No Contemporary, hosted by the artist Knowledge Bennett and curated by the artist and great curator Tori Zalvin. But since the pandemic, we needed to regroup. For artists, there are hopefully no obstacles, only challenges. And this group took this challenge with aplomb and hopefully hit it out of the park. Confined to their homes, bunkers, and garrets, some continued their important work from before, and some found new inspiration, challenging themselves to create fresh works heretofore unthinkable. We have two sites, our Mothership webpage and our incredible Art Step site, which I'm sharing with you here. I'm going to go full screen. Here. And you guys can visit this at any time, but we're glad to be taking you now. Originally, as I mentioned here at the beginning, with their press release, sculptors have turned to painting and painters have turned to video and 3D modeling and more. Some have been creating works surrounding this moment, ideas and feelings towards the pandemic. Some have been creating work that is an extension of their ideas and ideology before this moment. Art is more important than ever to inspire others to think critically about the world in order for it to progress. And art isn't necessarily therapy, but all artists find hopeful edification in the meditation of the process of expressing themselves through their work. But we all hope this work seems timeless as much as it may be timely. We're so proud of our capstone seniors and what they have accomplished during their time at Roski and here, and so excited for what they will create after graduation. This exhibition represents a milestone, a bridge between their past and their great futures. All have written manifestos that exclaim their personal ideologies towards art, design, and their own work that is manifest in the website portion of this exhibition, and they've created a virtual gallery that will take you on a journey of their works in a space they created all their own. The students will take you on a walkthrough of both sites in their own words and present you to the rich cornucopia of their outpourings. Tonight's order for presentation are Gigi, Caleb, Domia, Michael, Chandler, Niki, Christian, Ellie, Leah, Claire, Antonio, Rebekah, Stephen, Tiffany, Larry, and Yuchen. We hope you all sit back and enjoy their presentations. Please ask questions via the Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom screen, and I will be happy to ask your queries on your behalf. Also, please investigate the sites on your own time and see more via the links to the students' personal websites on each of their pages, and feel free to contact them via the sites too. Also, look for our shows at the new TZ exhibition space in the windows of the downtown LA Taschen Book Building, starting May 15th, curated by Tori Zalvin, and online via the new STP site, which will have 60 schools from all over the globe, starting also on May 15th. And now, without further ado, the Capstone Kids with We're Still Here, and the first person to take over the screen is Gigi. Gigi, take it away.
Oh, okay. Sorry, everyone. I was muted there. My name is Gabrielle Robinson. Everyone in the class knows me as Gigi. First, I'm going to walk you through my page on our portfolio website just so that you can get a background on my work as a whole and the work that I've created for this exhibition. So I do work in disability activism, I do graphic design, I do traditional landscape photography and other kinds of photography that I post all over my social media pages. So for this project, I decided to do a play on identity and figuring out where my agency is, especially with being a content creator and an influencer who shares my life so publicly. So I really dove in and was showcasing my art and photos as professional pieces of photography, as well as like installation art that would be hung up in a gallery. Here are the photographs that are all on the gallery walls, which you'll see shortly. Here is my creative manifesto that I made, and if you're interested in reading the full manifesto, feel free to click this link here. Here's a short film that I made about my experience as a content creator and just figuring out overall, establishing that it is art and that it is hard work, and it is something that is shared professionally, and it's not kind of like an ambiguous professional field. So let's go over to our art steps, gallery space, and I'm going to take us to my spot. So here we are, going over to my little gallery space, and on your screens, if you're viewing this later, you can zoom in or out by clicking those 2 feet, but for now I'm just gonna kind of go up close, just give it a minute. Again, here's my manifesto, and the reason why it's in the form of a grid is because every social media platform has some kind of grid, and I've just become really fascinated with the way that grids look together and how they can inform or not inform, for I guess lack of better words, what the content of each post on social media can mean. There's always going to be a variety. I personally do a lot of brand collaborations as well as just sharing my lifestyle, and all of those posts can be seen in this picture, which is just a grid of my Instagram. So if you want to go check that out, you can there, as well as on my TikTok account, and which is linked here as well. And on both of these platforms over the past semester, I've focused on not only making the art or my brand collaboration photographs more arty or more representational of my photographic skills, but also just creating a brand for myself so that I can market to brands in the future and people can really get a clear, concise vision of who I am based off of my social media pages. And so I will click, oops, sorry about that. This thing is a little fussy. Here are some posts, so you can again go through and see the outtakes here of all of these photo shoots, which were all for content collaborations that I did with big brands. And yeah, that's about it. If there's any questions, please feel free to message the little chat box down there, and I can answer them for you if you want. And make sure to check out this video. It's just kind of long and I don't want to make you guys watch it right now, so watch it on your own time. And without further ado, unless, are there any questions first? Q&A.
We do have one. Hold on one second. It's from Samuel. Does your presentation of grids play into your disability activism at all?
It might in the future. I'm still working on that one, as you might know. There are some cool things coming this month, so look out for them relating to disability activism. They're just not up yet because of the campaign requirements, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So without,
I have to chime in for a second. Gigi also was the main engineer for our wonderful Instagram and TikTok pages. So please check us out and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks so much, Gigi, and your team.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Without further ado, I'm gonna pass it off over to Caleb. Thanks for viewing all of my work, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Caleb. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. I'm a photographer as well as a creative direction artist and brand strategist for recording artists here on campus. And my aim with that kind of work is to use the skills that I've acquired over the last 4 years and kind of plant that commercial world of the music industry. Here are two previous works that kind of tie the work that I'm going to present tonight. We're going over to art steps in just a moment, and I'll guide you to my most recent work. Hold on just one second. So with these two pieces here, they are birthed from my experience growing up in Alabama as a pastor's son and also discovering my queer sexuality within these worlds. And I think I want to draw a parallel or locate the intersections between the costuming that Black women participate in and the all, also along with different queer worlds such as ballroom and drag. And ultimately, I think there's a through line between the dramatics of it all, and I wanted to highlight that with the way that my body is contorting and also with the presentation of the costume, the story. And I think the creation of this work, like going into it, is a part of my photography project exhibit as well, but I wanted to kind of locate where artists escape once they are on a performing stage. Because my dad was a pastor. I saw him transitioning into a role and I realized that I can't even make work about that area until I make work about myself, and I'm an artist. So what I wanted to reassess what I was consumed by on a daily basis, like religion, and why I had a certain weird relationship with those specific objects within the church because of my sexuality. So this work kind of comes out of a sort of reclaiming these materials and reclaiming the space of inheritance that I ultimately will either shed or further down the line embrace even longer. So a lot of the project was definitely rooted in healing and also stage performance in a way, and dealing with gestures of the body, and ultimately presentation and self-discovery. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to the wonderful Domia. If there's not any questions.
Thanks so much, Caleb.
Thank you, Caleb. My name is Domia Edwards. This is my work in Art Steps. This new work is kind of different from some of my other things. I've worked a lot with body and self-portraiture, as I am a photographer, but I've been
Domia,
more...
we can't see green, Domia.
Oh. Okay. Can you see me now?
Maybe try to stop screen share and then start it again.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Gorgeous.
You're good. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so this work is pretty new for me. As I worked a lot in photography throughout my entire practice, I started delving more into self-portraiture and performance as I got into college, working with multimedia things such as sculpture, performance, video, text, sound. And these new works were kind of in response to the pandemic and quarantine, and I started kind of looking more into my neighborhood and the land that surrounded me. And I decided to do a performance on my street, which is actually, I found out that my great-granduncle lived in the house down the street from me this past semester. And I started to visit him and at his home, and when he went into a hospice care facility, and at the beginning of COVID, of course, I wasn't able to visit him any longer. So You know, it was kind of that separation and me trying to, you know, find that connection with him over the land, as I've done my past work, and my thesis work that I've been working on all year has dealt with my mom and her home and like around my family, and land and where my body like has a relationship with land and familial relationships. And so I kind of extended that to work in California through him, who he actually passed last week because of COVID. And, you know, this work, you know, resonates even more now with me trying to kind of connect with the land and my spirituality and home and family in this work. And these cyanotypes, which is a sun process, where you can expose, once it's like, it's light sensitive on fabric, and once you expose it to the sun, it changes color and it like lasts on the fabric. And so I asked for a list from everybody in the class, from my friends, from my family, of their fears and things that they're grateful for before the pandemic even started. But as soon as it did, and like, you know, we were quarantined, I feel like the fears and everything that we took for granted before was even more, you know, apparent to all of us. And so it became even more important and pertinent after the pandemic started. And so, yeah, these are the works and art steps. And I also have another space where I put my work from more of my thesis show, which is more of my photography-based work that dealt with my mother's home in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and my travels and journeys there, kind of looking into my family history and the relationships that the town had with my family. So you can also see it here in the show. I also want to show you guys my website. So this goes into like my process about me and my work. It also has the video of the performance, which I won't play the whole thing here, but you guys should definitely check it out. You know, it just has the entire process of making this work, and has all the links to my other website and my manifesto, where I go into depth about talking about the work and my history. Thank you guys. Now I'm going to pass it on to Michael.
Domia, hold on one second. We have a question for you from your folk. Does your work reflect any of your heroes and sheroes?
Heroes and sheroes?
Yes.
I mean, I think definitely. I mean, my heroes and sheroes are my family, and my work, like, you know, making this work over the past year has been so edifying because I've been able to spend time with them. I've gotten to learn them on an entirely different level through my photography, through my art, and that's been an extreme pleasure to be able to share that with the people that I love most and that love me and care about me the most. So, yes.
And I have one for you, Domia, from Andy Campbell. He says, Domia, the work is so rich, and I'm so sorry to hear about your relative. I love the idea of exhibiting photographs outside. It seems so taboo because photos are so sensitive to light. Do you plan to show photos outside in the future?
I mean, I think definitely. I think because with so much of my work dealing with land and space, and the way that I use photography to photograph myself and my body in spaces, I think it would definitely make sense to put photographs outside in real time. But, you know, usually they are considered such precious objects. You know, all the photography and my thesis show was all taken on film, printed in the darkroom, and I hold them really dearly, but I'm trying to get less precious with my work, because at the end of the day, like, no material thing really exists in real time. It's about the moment. It's about the feeling that is created when making, which I feel like is more important to me than anything.
Okay, excellent, Domia. Thanks so much. And Jay West says, this is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Michael, you're muted.
Okay, here we go. All right, let's get this party started. Can you guys hear me? See my screen okay?
You bet.
Okay, perfect. All right, my name is Michael Cook. I'm an artist, designer, and musician based in Los Angeles, California, basking in this heat right now. My work primarily revolves around the sensuality of rock and roll culture. I'm currently in a band with my brothers, which is joining us now or might be already in. But I wanted to find a way for my fine art practice to merge my two loves, so fine art and music. So I thought, why not make each work kind of representational or influenced by the songs that we're writing. So the 4 artworks that you see here are inspired kind of like what the music tells me. Essentially, I'm like painting what I hear, so to speak. I like to say that when I paint, the color is the keyboard, the eye is the hammer, and the soul is the piano with its many strings. And essentially, my goal is to showcase the harmony, no pun intended, between music and fine art. So I'm gonna start with the 2 oil paintings on the right. The first one is called Dream Ding, which is a song about kind of exploring dreams, more specifically the similarities between your night dreaming and your typical daydreaming. And the black knobs that you see around the piece are actually guitar tuning knobs. And so I have guitar strings that are attached to the knobs. So the piece actually becomes interactive. It almost becomes like an instrument, so you can play the painting. Of course, there are limitations within the virtual space. So hopefully play them in your imagination, and hopefully it's edifying in one way or another. The next piece we're gonna go to is the fabric piece to the left. It's a portrait made out of lace and zippers and different fabric that's emotive and titillating. And the piece is basically trying to capture the young musician in Hollywood trying to climb the ladder of success. And the book piece that you see along the way there is a sculpture made out of actual books, but the books play a special role in the songwriting process. Books like Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and the concept of the wanderer kind of aligns with all the books. It's also an adaptation of the Charles Bukowski quote, wander, find what you love, and let it kill you. So the piece kind of suggests this more metaphorical killing of yourself in order to evolve. The piece actually spells out the chorus of the song, and each of the words are folded, the pages are folded. So you can see more detailed shots on the website. There you go. You guys can see that. And also read my manifesto, and also my website, michaelbcook.com. So yeah, thank you all for listening. I'm gonna pass it down south to Chandler.
Hi, my name is Chandler. We're going to start here on my webpage. As I'm sure most of y'all know, this is kind of a 2-part show. We've got the website for some of the more detailed shots and looks and some information about the art, and then the Art Steps 3D virtual space to kind of get a sense for how things would be installed in that space. So to start off, there's a little bio about myself. I am primarily a 2D artist. I work best in drawing, painting, printmaking, and various forms of design. But also more recently, I've really gotten into sculpture and installation and photography and ceramics and just anything else that I could learn while I was still here at USC. And so I'm going to show y'all a quick video. It doesn't have any sound, so I'm going to just keep talking over it. And so it kind of just explains my process for this body of work that I created for the show. And what I did here was I paired maps, which as you are seeing here, it is a map of Athens, Greece. And I paired that with pieces of text. So these are text phrases that I either learned in museums or from specific people, or just various places in these cities when I was visiting them. And so what I've done here is I've spelled out this phrase: in the great bright eyes of the owl, the ancients saw the eyes of goddess Athena. The owl became the sacred bird of the goddess and this city. And I spelled this out by using street names here on the map. So like it starts with the word in, so I'm starting with the street name that starts with I to then N to then T, H, E, all the way until the entire phrase has been spelled out. And then it kind of gives me this jumble of lines and shapes that I'm then using as a sketch, essentially, to then produce the rest of my artwork. So for this specific piece titled Athens, because we're here in Athens, I was really drawn to these little boxes that were forming around the street names as I was dodging around them. So theoretically, on the physical map that I was drawing this on, you would see the street names and could kind of decode it, essentially, if you were to follow all of the teeny tiny little lines. So I took those boxes and just extruded those and created almost like this new little city out of the old city, which was super interesting to kind of create this new imaginary space out of this old space. And each of these blocks are at various heights depending on the letter that they initially represented. So all of these were shapes that dodged around a street name. So if that street name began with the letter A, then that's just a 1-inch block. Whereas if it began with the letter Z, that was a 26-inch block, and so on and so forth for each letter of the alphabet as their number of the alphabet goes. And so this is kind of just the rundown of this specific piece, Athens, but also just how I then proceeded with the rest of the body of work. So as you continue to scroll here, you can see some detail shots and also how it is installed in the 3D space. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then as well, just a little bit of text about my process, everything I've kind of just explained to y'all. This, I won't show this whole video, but you'll just get a snippet of this next piece is called Torino. It's from the city Torino, Italy. And the phrase paired with this piece of, or this initial map was, my memory is a panorama where the most diverse lands and heavens with their burning sun or misty horizon are painted on the same canvas. And that kind of produced this really interesting shape that instead of taking the boxes out of it, I then just took the negative spaces out of these lines that they produce. So what you're seeing here is just a 3D sculpture of the negative space of each of the lines on the map. And so you kind of get this really cool flicker effect as you're moving around it at different angles. And so this is how it is installed in the space. And that was all Torino. And then the last piece in this body of work is called Stockholm. And again, I'll just show like a snippet of the video before going elsewhere. But basically I took the actual shape of the lines as they were on the map. So they created this distinct shape, and then I just extruded that downwards and then through the ground in order to create this piece that's fairly interactive. You can walk up to it, you can kind of peek into it, you can see the little bits of the floor shining through on the bottom here. And so each of these are uniquely installed in the space that I'll go to here shortly. And then just also on my webpage here, it's as Keith said, that we were all writing manifestos for this class just about what art is to us and its meaning, what we think art is, how we approach it, how our ideas of art then apply to this art we have now created for the show. And so for mine, I had kind of two parts to it. One part was a little poem and one part was the actual prose about the specific work for the show. So this is just an animation of 2 stanzas of the poem that preceded my manifesto. And so now, or before I do that, at the bottom of everyone's webpage too, if we have websites, our websites are linked there so y'all can check out the rest of our art. And I think all of us have an Instagram linked as well if you want to just learn more about us. So here we are in the virtual space. I'm going to take y'all over to my artwork here. And as you can see, this is the same video that I have shown y'all already. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get videos to work in this Art Steps space. So if you see this symbol underneath any piece in the gallery, then be sure to click on it because there's a link for where you can actually view the whole video. And so that's either on our websites or on Vimeo or however they're linked. But so this is the video piece that I had previously shown y'all. And then this next one is Athens, which I had shown y'all as well. And the tools I'm using here are like a presetted tour that we've placed points throughout the gallery, but you can also at any point just click on the ground and it'll take you to wherever you clicked. And in order to then swivel your head or shift the camera, you're just clicking and dragging, and that will navigate you around the space. So you're able to kind of interact with them and see them from different angles of it as if you were in a real gallery. And then here is Torino, as I had explained earlier. And unfortunately, a couple of the faces of this one were kind of lost in translation. That was due to a technical difficulty between the 3D software I used and this ArtStep software. But this is how it would be installed in a 3D space. And then finally, we have Stockholm here, which you can kind of view into a little bit. And then you could also, you know, click anywhere else and look back at it to see it in its entirety. So this is my body of work for our show We're Still Here. And next
Chandler, hold on one second.
Okay.
We have a couple of great questions for you. And FYI, awesome. Everyone, Chandler was one of the main architects, along with Stephen, of this fantastic gallery space. So we owe a lot to Chandler for being chief engineer. Andy Campbell has a question. Chandler, he says, really love your procedural way of generating form in Athens. How do you find your quotes?
So the quotes were all texts that I had either learned or heard or just found in these specific cities. So the Athens quote was from a museum in Athens, and that was just something that has stuck with me since my travels. All of this took place nearly 2 years ago. And so each of these phrases were a phrase that I had learned and that I have personally tied to this space, which is why I chose to kind of combine the two, like the maps that are kind of accessible to anyone, and then the personal side of like what I think of or what I remember about being in that city.
Very good. And here's from Domia's Folk. Who or what are your inspirations?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I have all sorts of ones. Growing up, my favorite artist was Georgia O'Keeffe, just always naturally. I just loved her style. But more recently, I've really gotten into this systematic approach of art, and I've found several different artists that are just really beautiful at creating these systems or these ways for art to almost generate itself. Like you find yourself being in this mixture of the art and who's creating who or who's directing who. And some of that has been from Charles Gaines, some of that has been from looking back at maybe more minimalist movements. And then my painting professor, a fellow professor here at USC, Edgar Arsenault, was really influential in showing me different artists and kind of opening this world and way for me to work. I can't see the participants. I don't know if he's here, but if he is, thank you, Edgar. It's been really fruitful.
And Chandler, we have one last question from John Wingo. Great job with the virtual gallery, he says, Chandler. Are you interested in building any of these physically?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't know if I would ever personally fabricate them. That was kind of a cool turnaround in working in this virtual space, because as I'd said, I'm primarily a 2D artist. And so I was not thinking of these sculptures at the beginning of the semester. I wasn't even in a 3D mindset. But then once COVID hit and things were shut down, I was like, I would love to do something I have not done before. I haven't done this 3D modeling. I haven't envisioned an entire 3D space or installation and not then fabricated it. And so now that I have the files, it would definitely be cool if I could work with someone or if someone knew how to get it done. Like for example, Stockholm, I would love to see in maybe a translucent acrylic or glass or something that really could cast some nice shadows on the ground. Like I'm definitely thinking how these would be realized in actual space. I haven't done it yet, but maybe one day.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chandler.
Thank you. And next I'm going to pass it over to Niki, whose work is right over here. So take it away, Niki.
Hi everyone, I was muted. So my name is Niki, and I have been working on my final project for about as long as we've been in quarantine. For our We're Still Here website, you can see my work in there in a little bit of detail. I will show you more detail right now in a few seconds. So I have a background of graphic design. I still do graphic design and web design, but for this final, it was just I gravitated towards doing my art piece just as a fine art piece. And I use a lot of calligraphy in my pieces. And I use patterns, and I use Persian patterns. I'm from Iran originally, so a lot of my work has inspiration from Iran, a lot of patterns, a lot of textures and shapes and the calligraphy that I put in there. This is another piece that I have worked on before. It's a inspiration for like contemporary Persian rugs. It's all handmade. I use a lot of gold leaf in my work. If you see here, I have some text. I made this about 6 months ago, and I have like a history of Persian rug in here written. So that is that. For this project, when I was little, I used to memorize a lot of poems from a famous Iranian poet his name is Hafez. And this is one thing like my dad asked my sister and I to do. And so it was like it was a good part of my childhood. I have good memories with it. So I don't know why, like I go towards Hafez when I want to make my art. So I use his poems in here. And what you see here is like some of his poem and then some of my own typography work in Farsi that I made. I have used fabric, I use threads, I sew in them, and I've used different textures, acrylic, and also some other hard textures I put in there before I like use my acrylic. So I want to show you the piece itself, and if you go on, so this is a piece, it's a fresco piece. I did it I live by campus on 30th. I did it I live in a 400 square feet studio. I did this on my wall here. So over there, it starts from here, and I wasn't planning it to be this big. It just became this big, and I'm not very mad about it. So this is the piece. I don't know if it's clear or if you don't see it as clear.
No, we see it clearly.
So there are multiple layers that have been worked in here.
And Niki, while you're showing us, Domia's folk have a question for you. They ask, your work has a 3D appearance. Is that intentional?
Only this piece is a piece that I've added to it. It's the evil eye. It was actually, I had it hanging there and I gold leafed like all the screws and everything around it. But that's the only thing. The 3D effect, I think, is because I've used like fabric and, you know, different layers. So that's why you see different layers, and it might look a little bit 3D. So this is the entrance to my closet. And this is another piece I made. It was going to be about love, but then kind of it went, actually during the making of it, like the relationship ended. So, and ironically, this says Esh, which is love in Farsi. So this piece kind of fell. It wasn't intentional, all of it happened. So I really like this piece. It's one of my favorite. I have done printmaking. Some of the pieces I've used in here, I've done it with the acid in the printmaking studio, the etching for multiple hours. And this one, I've done it in printmaking. I use linoleum. So I had my dad write a poem, the Hafez poem, and he wrote it, and I made it bigger, and I cut it on linoleum, and then I did a print of it. this big. So yeah, that's basically it. My work is right now mainly this.
Niki, hold on one second. Andy Campbell has a question for you. He says, Niki, so nice to see your work. Also love Hafez. Were you working in fresco before the quarantine, or is it something that came along with being in self-isolation? And is it already the way you were working? If it was the way you were already working, why fresco?
It was just easier. So the pandemic happened and I had no tools, or like basically I had no paper, or I'm not a painter. I've never done painting, so I don't have any canvas. The canvas I have, that's the only canvas I've ever bought, and that's the thing I made on it. But everything else I've always done like on paper. I had no paper, so I ended up just using my wall, and it makes me feel good. And during the pandemic, it was something I was going through, still am. So yeah, that's why I did it on the wall, but maybe I'll continue.
Yeah, you should. Thanks a lot, Niki. Great presentation.
Thank you. And we go to my friend Christian, who is actually a few houses from me.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Christian. I'm from Connecticut, and we're going to take a look at the 3D virtual space first. I'm just going to look at my work and how it sits there. All right, so I like for people to see it kind of head on first. You kind of get the sense of like the actual just individual shapes without the repetition and the symmetry. And as you kind of go past it, you can kind of see it's a lot more like developed, and it deals a lot with repetition, geometry, and symmetry. And that's a lot of like my work in the past 18 to 24 months. And unfortunately, the software that I used and when I translated it onto this like virtual space, the texture of the work is not as defined, but up close you can kind of get a sense of the negative space between the actual layers, and which is kind of nice. I was really hoping it'd be a little bit more like profound with like a little bit more aggressive shadows where the light hits the piece. But I think just the overall lighting of the room kind of eliminates the very the one direction shadow. But still, I'm very happy with how it came here. And I'm gonna pull back a little bit. So each work, initially I made these guys separately, and I'll take you to my website to show you just how they look actually in my, that's not, sorry. So here's the first piece I took in the SketchUp software, which actually gives kind of the lines a little bit over exaggerated in terms of just like they're very dark, but it still kind of gives you a little bit more of what it looks like. And the one on the bottom left is called introvert, and the one at the top is the extrovert. And at first they were separate, and I wanted them to be separate, but as I was thinking about them and kind of what I wanted to like portray, which was my abstract rendering of myself at different times. And I think some people think that they're only one, they're only an extrovert, they're only an introvert, but I realized that at times throughout a day, I can be a polar opposite of what I once was. And I felt that them together give a more kind of wholesome render of what I wanted to show, is that it's only half of oneself. And if you were actually to kind of try to see them together, and if you were to push the top one on an ellipse a little bit left, you'd see that they actually, they're cohesive, and together they create a very streamlined, squared shape. And yeah, let me see if I can get any other images of it. And here's a head-on one. Another head-on. A little more texture shot. Interior. And this one also showcases the shadow and the highlights a little bit better. But the overall virtual space has been awesome. And yeah, that's about it. And I'm going to pass it off to Leah.
Hi everyone, thank you, Christian. These are my pieces. I went a more non-traditional route and I created movie posters for my exhibition, and here's my website. With this exhibition, I really wanted to dismantle what we consider a valid form of art in the fine art world. For professors who've had me in the past, you know that I love working in traditional mediums such as oil or acrylic painting. But recently, I've taken an interest in mediums such as digital illustration or photo compositing. And with this gallery exhibition, I wanted to combine the world of digital design as well as the more fine art world and really challenge what is considered art. I love cinema, I'm a huge cinephile, and I wanted to combine my passions for cinematic arts and the entertainment industry with my artistic pursuits. The reason I chose movie posters, besides my own love for cinema, is because I really think it's such an underrated art form. And in the industry, for example, it takes hours and hours of compositing and different iterations to come up with the final poster. And something I talk about in my manifesto, which is here, is how in the fine art world, the work that's validated is really when the numbers are high in terms of the price they're sold, when a painting sells for millions of dollars, for example, rather than when the numbers are high for the amount of audience members that have seen the work. So works such as movie posters are labeled as commercial because they're seen around the world and they are not considered valid art forms. And it really invalidates the amount of creativity that it takes to make these for industry professionals. And with this exhibition, I hope to shine a light on movie posters and artists such as these, and really show how we take for granted the art that we see all around us. You can read more about it in the manifesto. And if you look at my other artworks, I try to wear a lot of hats. I have traditional paintings, and then I have digital illustrations. I think that there's room for all forms of art in the world, and that all art is valid, and there shouldn't be an elitist form of gatekeeping within the fine art world. Okay. And thank you, everyone. And if we look over here, we have the work of Claire, who I will pass it off to.
Hello, I'm gonna try to share now. Okay, oh my gosh. Trying to find it. Cool. Is it going?
The screen's showing and we can hear you, Claire.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, cool. I didn't even press share, but this is Nick. No, wait, this is
We're still looking at Leah's screen.
Yeah. Okay, found it. Sorry about that. Too many tabs. Hi. Hello. I'm Claire. I'm a BA, and I've actually been here part-time for a long time, but I'm finally graduating, and I split my time here at school with my time at an accounting firm doing bookkeeping. And I actually mentioned that because I regularly draw on that experience, that background as a source of inspiration or content to my art practice. And that was the case for this piece, which is called Spending Patterns. And I'll discuss how that aligns in a moment, but I really briefly wanted to go over some of my previous work to indicate how they led into this. So this red X piece here is a small detail from a much larger piece. It's a drawing that's just covered in teeny tiny red X's, which is a color and gesture I sourced from a period of admin work I did at my job when I was marking countless tax forms with red X's on the signature lines. So it took over my life, and so I made a drawing out of that sense of increasing quantity. And this is just a detailed image from a new iteration in which I started to employ embroidery, cross stitch. And then on a slightly different track, I made, might possibly be known for using my hair in my work. That's all the rest of these. So I've been drawing and sewing that with the actual strands of my fallen hair for a year or so now. At first it was a way to explore the experience of hair loss that I was dealing with, but just on a larger scale in general. In my work, I'm concerned with themes of accumulation and collection and documentation, identification of audio problems. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
I'm thinking maybe you're a little close to the microphone, Claire. Something's obstructing it. We could basically hear it. Try it now.
I don't know. I have a. Am I on? I can't even see where I'm at.
Yes, you are. And now we can hear you perfect.
You're
Okay.
good, Claire. We can see your screen and the mic is better now. So keep going. You're good.
You're welcome for that. Yeah. So I moved back up there. I'm going backwards through my website, basically, just to kind of show how it grows. But so my work in general deals with themes of accumulation and collection and documentation, but also at a very personal level, like so dealing with the contours of my private life and private space. So to me, this particular project, Spending Patterns, kinds of bridges the space and the concepts of the Red X piece and the hair pieces, since it employs a process I use at my office job, while also having a direct relationship to the traces of my body, so with my hair work, since these dot patterns are produced using my fingerprints, you know, those like identity markers. So for this process, I ink my fingertips and stamp them onto 2-inch wide strips of adding machine tape, you know, so they're rolls of this pretty cheap, pretty translucent, non-archival paper. And then the different mini compositions of the fingerprint dots are rendered by the keystroke pattern of typing a number, just a number on a 10-key number pad, like, or, you know, a calculator, one of those things, if that helps with familiarity. So really this is a piece which at its most basic in its function, if you will, was conceptualized to track my daily personal financial transactions, my daily expenses, and then income, which are these little red dots. Because I found that as a bookkeeper, even though I was effectively organizing my clients' financial information, I wasn't really on top of it for myself. And also it kind of followed in the tradition of drawing on the gestures and patterns from my job, but reflecting that my more recent transition to a bookkeeping role. Formally, then every mini rectangle here represents a transaction. As a point of reference, they're all the scale of a credit card. That's where these lines comes from, it's the outline. And then every long vertical strip represents a day, and then each horizontal panel, I'll go up here, like this, like the tiers in here, represents a month. And so this particular presentation starts at January 1st here. This is January, then February, March, April, ending at April 30th, so last week. And there was something really intriguing to me about being super revelatory and out in the open with this information, which is generally pretty private and confidential. And then being out there is this direct contrast to my general tendency to being reserved and self-contained. I think there's an audio problem again, maybe?
No, you're good. Keep going.
Oh, notification. Yeah, but then in contrast to being open, like also encoding it to this level where you can't necessarily tell what I'm indicating. And by encoding it, I mean, it's this abstract thing, but once you know it's based on the 10-key pattern, you can figure out which individual numbers I'm marking out, but you still don't necessarily know in what order they're supposed to be. So for example, if it's the 10-key calculator thing, this is 0, this is a decimal point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then based on this accompanying information, you can figure out that it's saying 17.28, but it could also be 87.21. You never know. But, you know, and like kind of like with that earlier red X piece, I'm making this discrete manual tactile typing gesture and translating into a visual pattern, which then becomes something else as it accumulates and builds on itself. This kind of flat drawing, cascading pattern of dots. You know, so far I've talked about the abstract representational aesthetics of the piece. But first the project started with me writing down my transactions as they occurred. That's like this, what I showed you before. And then I also wrote out the details of them on the backs, like this, of the little strips of paper. And then because of the paper's translucency, you can still see some of the pencil marks on the backside. That's what these little smudges are. And then people told me that it made them want to read what was on the back. So I decided to let them, /you, if you want to do the work for it, in a way. And I created this kind of interactive document, which is this guy, on my webpage. And you know, though I resented it at first, the shift to an online platform actually kind of opened up possibilities of display for me. I'll briefly click in here. Just as a sort of tutorial, I guess you can click in and then you start to hover over little individual strips and the reverse appears. You have to zoom in from these little buttons at the bottom. They're annoying. You can't zoom any other way, but it brings you to the detail. And if you zoom in, then you can like actually read what's on the back. And if you're somehow really interested, then you can kind of forensically find out what nice bedding patterns are like. And you can page through it again. Here's to April. And this kind of became a case study for me unintentionally in how my spending habits changed while under quarantine. You know, and as we moved online, as we were stuck in our homes, our art really like came to reflect that experience, unintentionally even. So I think that was a cool experience for me. And then if you look back to the main page,
Oh, now there we have audio.
You can't, I didn't, yeah, it auto plays only when you get to the back.
Now we're.
It's also here, but I'm not gonna play it right now because it's 12 minutes long, but it's just, it was another element, another approach to me for how this kind of numeric data, personal information could be translated to another like sense. You know, first I did to a visual sense, but then there's an auditory level. So it's a 12 minutes of typing while I was bookkeeping. And then just
Javier Fumat, our very wonderful master printmaker, has a question for you. He's wondering how you, why you might have changed from the art you were doing with hair to a systematic art choice. And he knows that it's hard to categorize that earlier work, but why the change?
I don't really see them as a change. That's the thing. And I've been working with the hair in other ways than he's probably last seen it. He was there for when I made my cyanotypes and lithographs here. But the hair kind of comes out of this practice of accumulation and collection because I was picking up the hair that I lost in the shower and then putting in a bag and storing that and then using that. And then these pieces that I've shown here specifically are the kind of more formal manifestations of it. But, you know, something like this, and then, you know, a picture I don't have posted actually involves like documenting the hair as I encounter it. So like I take a picture of the hair I get on my shower wall when I wash my hair. So that's like a larger concept, much longer explanation. I probably already overstayed my time, but there's an element of chance in that And then on a, like going back to this red piece is a systematized approach of using just these very limited means and markers. So as I said, bridging that kind of space, I was dealing with like collection and documentation, and then how chance would play out in terms of the patterns that my fingerprints, my typing would render, you know, and then also, so that the chance is like what the pattern is, and then how long each strip is going to be. And so like, I think that covers it for me.
No, that's super interesting. Thanks you for answering. And we have one last question from Andy Campbell. And he says, Claire, your piece also reminds me of loom punch cards. The Jacquard looms used these and were some of the first computers connecting to your line of work in accounting. But his question is unrelated. Why cite the installation in a doorway threshold instead of the middle of the space? Also, the online interactive component is amazing.
Thank you, Andy. Miss your classes. So yeah, I was gonna end up in the gallery here anyways. I put in the doorway just because it was just like something to experiment with, really, as simple as that. I kind of consider this virtual installation of my work secondary to the website part, the webpage, because the image quality is kind of low and you can't really see any detail. See how much closer I can get. But I think the doorway maximized the possible interactivity for me, rather than, you know, having our virtual visitors walk up to a wall and then turn away. They have to go through it to move on. And there's something kind of really cool that ends up happening when you fly through it. And on that note, I will move on. See, okay, yeah. Move on to my pal, Antonia. Who's next?
He says the interactivity makes a lot of sense to him.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Andy.
Hi. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, I'm assuming. Okay.
Great.
Okay, good. So I, for my show, I just wanted to really take some time to self-reflect. I've produced a lot of sculptural work over my time at USC, and I think for myself, especially right now with everything that's been going on and kind of just like the state of the world, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. When we first started doing like the Zoom online classes, I know I wasn't really producing much work. And I think, I don't want to say necessarily it's because like I wasn't feeling it, because I feel like I'm always thinking of things. I think I just didn't know what to do, what would have felt right. And so I was thinking a lot about just like the stories that we tell, and, you know, after all this, you know, what is going to come. And even from my experience at like USC, I'm like, I think there's a lot of times, often you get like this hype that, oh, you go to college for 4 years and then it's like some extravagant, you know, festivity. And, you know, for me, myself, I've been in my room for like the past 2 months, and, you know, it's not like a bad thing or anything. Like, I'm glad to do it. I just think it's odd. It's an odd feeling. And I think I really wanted to capture this idea of storytelling. So I chose to create some works that were all entirely black and white. And I didn't want to even make like shades of gray. I just wanted it to be solid white, solid black. And I think because of that, I was doing a lot of research, and historically speaking, all like cultures and societies, they base storytelling entirely off of the colors black and white. And then as they become more evolved and they advance and they get more vocabulary, then they add colors. And what I mean by that is like, you're never going to find like a society where the first 2 colors were pink and orange. You know, it always starts with black and white. It's like the day, it's night. There's a lot of things you can do with that. And then they add red. But I wanted to stick with that. So I was kind of focusing on my work here a lot of playing with that and stories and kind of how do I convey certain things. So this piece right here, it's essentially like a wooden wheel, and then I started building clay on top of it. And it's actually almost really difficult to see, but this like black kind of spot right here, like in here and here and here, that's actually 3-dimensional. So it's like wood. And then I just started stacking clay on top of it, and all the white, everything white is clay and everything black is wood. And I think for me here, I really kind of wanted to get sort of this idea of a cycle, but not only just like a cycle in a bad way or in a good way, because I think a lot of times when we think about cycles, it's either from a scientific standpoint, like something like the rain cycle, or we think about something in terms of like the cycle of life. And I think that's kind of what I was more focused on. And I think I was trying to focus it not so much about like, oh, you know, you live and you die and then whatever and all this. I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to think about life in terms of the perspective that from one moment to another, you're kind of constantly living that moment, but even the moments that are gone and the moments that haven't happened, and from the beginning of your life to the end, it's kind of just this one continuous loop. And I think that was like a way that I wanted to look at it in this way, in that things never kind of really end, and there's kind of always, you know, just because, oh, something happened so many years ago or you don't really remember it, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and then it doesn't mean in that moment it still isn't happening. And I think I really wanted to talk about that for this piece. For this piece, Gone, I was actually mentioning this briefly in a previous class, but I was talking about how I was thinking almost the opposite with this one, in that I wanted to think about what is kind of the ultimate last moment. And I think kind of the initial thought was, oh, the initial last moment is when you die. But then I was like, what does it really even mean to die? I think that's like kind of a weird gray area. And I think what I was thinking about is I was looking a lot at these Greek statues and about how, you know, all these people had to pose for them. And I think it's fascinating that like thousands of years ago, all these people, you know, pose for these statues and we don't know much about them, but for some reason we can still see them today and we still remember them. So in a way they're still living, but then at the same time, I mean, like, you know, I never met or know of my great grandparents, and that's only what, like 120 years ago, maybe, if even then. And I think kind of that's what I was trying to deal with here is, unless, you know, you're getting monuments made after you, or you're really just like putting yourself in the history book, after a while, pretty soon, things are going to be forgotten about you. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to show here, is kind of this sort of full last moment of like that one last person, and they're the only person who has the memory of you, and then it's gone. And yeah, so that's what I was working with here. I also wanted to kind of have the tool in here, and also in the head, as kind of this idea that those are the memories kind of fleeting from this like cracking figure. And then the last piece I wanted to share with you guys is this one called Growth. And for this one, I think I was trying to be more reflective of my time at USC. And I think it's really interesting because I get asked a lot about like, oh, is this, you know, what was your experience like? Is this, you know, everything that you always wanted? Are you glad that you went to USC? And I always think those are like really tricky questions, because I think you can always be like, oh, well, yes, I had a really good time, but there's this one thing or whatever. And I think there's always that kind of what if that always holds people back. And I think so often that like things happen to us and then we're always kind of like, oh, but what if that didn't happen? Or what if I did something else? And I think for me, I was thinking like, you know, even though I've had an amazing run at USC, I definitely had moments that were not stellar, that I'm not happy about, not to the university's fault. But I think about that and I go, that those experiences enriched my time at USC so much more, honestly, than most of the learning that I actually did here. And I was trying to think about, you know, I came here and I felt as a freshman a certain type of person. And then now that I'm graduating, I feel like a completely different type of person. And I don't think I'm like a different type of person because like I had fun, or, you know, I learned a lot of things about science GEs. I think what it comes down to is I got to really live like a lot of life and a lot of experiences at USC, and it's through those that I grow. So that's what I did here, is I tried to create sort of the most flat and kind of simplified face possible while still being three-dimensional. And I wanted to create the sense of pain, but sort of this growth that comes through from the pain. So even though I have wire kind of going up and down the mouth and the eyes, I have these white flowers that are growing out of it. And I think that's really kind of, to kind of summarize everything here, is I kind of want to go back to that, and that I chose to kind of do this black and white motif because I think a lot of times there is nothing is ever purely bad and nothing is ever purely good. But I didn't want to make that into like the gray. I just wanted to show that like in here that there's this white that kind of encircles the whole thing, and then it collides in the middle, and then here it's like the tool, it's like all these memories, and then the body is kind of breaking down. And yeah, so that's just kind of what I wanted to share with my show, and that's kind of what I was working on. All my final pieces for the semester were all actually in black and white. I made like 5 or 6 things, and yeah, thank you.
Antonio, Javier wants to let you know to please not come in as a freshman and disrupt his class. But he does love you and your train of thought. So thanks for that.
Yeah, great. All right, I think we'll move on. Up next, we have the marvelous Rebekah Rine.
Thank you, Antonio. Hi, I'm Rebekah, and welcome to my wing of our little gallery space here. So I'm just going to keep it on this view while I talk you guys through my thought process and sort of what I went through. I'm really excited to share these pieces. I was lucky enough to have a shared space show in the Lyndhurst Gallery earlier this year, and I sort of have this post-show blues coming out of it. I was going through a lot of personal turmoil, and then of course COVID-19 happened, and I'm really grateful for this capstone class of being my rock as an artist this semester. Being in quarantine, I'm stuck in Los Angeles. I'm all by myself. So that's been really interesting for me as a student, as an artist, and as an individual, just experiencing true isolation during this time. So just to start off, after my show and everything, the first painting that I created was this one on the right over here, titled Smush. And in reality, it is an acrylic painting on canvas that's about 30 by 40 inches. So it's definitely blown up a little bit here in the gallery, but as most of you know, I do like to work pretty big. I am traditionally a painter, and so being in lockdown, I gathered whatever canvases I had. I painted over some canvases. I used all the paint that I had and just kind of went crazy. So this painting, obviously, knowing that it was made in this time and having that, it's really easy to read it as a response to COVID-19 and feeling trapped and feeling uncomfortable and just feeling like completely squished and locked in this space, which I think is pretty straightforward in this portrait. And I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be super bogged down with conceptual elements. It was really just an emotional work for me to make. And then after I made this work, I realized that I was compiling all of this imagery from online to use, from stock images to Instagram images of just things that I could use as models and reference photos. And then I thought to myself, well, if I'm running low on canvas and I'm running low on paint, you know, why don't I use these reference photos that I would originally consider tools of my regular art practice and turn them into the medium in which my art takes form. So I started doing these digital paintings, which are the two on the left, entitled Pull and Smash. And these digital paintings, I call them paintless paintings more than digital paintings because I am not gifted when it comes to Photoshop and Illustrator. These two paintings were actually done on my phone, interestingly enough. I took these images and I was like, I'm feeling all alone and trapped at home, and the only way I'm really reaching out into the world is through my phone and through social media. And so I really wanted to take advantage of apps that I use to edit photos just for posting, because that's something that's fun, that I'm like, oh yeah, I do that all the time, so why don't I do that, but think about it as an art form. And so I took all of these apps that would not traditionally be used in digital artwork, and I manipulated them, everything from the Instagram story color matching tool to like Visco filters and all this crazy stuff, and used all these apps to help me create these digital paintings. There's actually 4 or 5 total that aren't pictured here, but will be featured on my personal website, RebekahRine.com, so look out for that if you guys are interested in seeing more of these. And yeah, I love painting. I love being a 2-dimensional artist. I never would have created these if it weren't for everything going on in the world. So I'm very glad that we pulled this show together and that I got to show these for you guys. So if there are no questions, I'd love to pass it along to my friend Steven.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebekah. That's awesome.
Hey everybody, my name is Steven Karapetyan, and I am I guess I'd say I'm a graphic designer and software developer that sort of experiments with, you know, different medias like traditional oil painting and so forth. To begin, I'd like to kind of share with you my first project that I was working on, and this stems from a dream I had during the height of the pandemic. So I think, as you all remember, sometime, I guess about a week past our spring break, it was pretty intense what we were kind of experiencing, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So both for myself regarding the pandemic and seeing where kind of society is headed, but also because it's kind of like the end of term of my academic career at USC. And USC's kind of sort of been a very special place for me because it's been an escape from the past lives that I used to live and sort of like the past world that I was from. And it kind of created this sort of cushion, this safety net for me, and the family that I met there and all the people that I met has been like, you know, a dream come true. And in that sense, sort of coming to an end to that brings a lot of fear and uncertainty, and that's kind of how this dream came about. And in this scene is of me staring out of an opening in a parking lot as of an industrial sort of uncanny setting someplace perhaps in Los Angeles, but it does sort of take me back to around the recession times because I was spending most of my times in a similar setting, and it kind of feels like I'm headed back in that direction. It's just a fear, a very subconscious fear of mine of moving back. And so I decided to create it's a digital rendering that was started off with that was transformed into a traditional oil paint, and then returned back into a digital rendering, and it's kind of blurred in. And the idea I was trying to capture is like, who am I? Where do I stand in the world? Like, what position or my identity? And the same, using a parallel of the artwork as a medium, transforming from medium to medium. But the question is like, where is the essence in it? The content, where is it sort of, as it transforms itself, where does it sort of evolve and move into? And so I was just kind of working with that. And then I have another piece here, and it's called Political Spectrum. And the idea with this piece is, again, coming from out during the pandemic, I was sort of really, glued into all the different breaking news that was occurring, and it was really intense, of course. So I was on, CNN and app, Fox News, and glued into the TV constantly, consuming all this news media, and this addiction of mine kind of led to me producing this piece, which, in a sense, it's an algorithm that scrapes different news outlets. So basically, it'll go to CNN.com, and it'll go ahead and scrape all the different headlines that are available for that day, and it'll put it into a database. And then once it's in that database, it runs through a machine learning algorithm. And that algorithm it's called a sentiment analysis. And what it does is, based off of that headline or that sentence, it'll give it a score of either positive or negative. So for an example here, you'll see it's an example, I really hate you, you're the worst. And that gives it a negative sentiment score of 0.855. And then I really like eating ice cream in the morning. So that's sort of positive, so 0.474. Once that score is captured, I then map it to a certain swatch, with red being the most negative and blue being positive, and then somewhere in the middle we have the grays. And then I ran a scheduler so that at least once or twice a day, the scraper kind of runs through the different news outlets and captures all the data and presents it as a visual with these color swatches. So here's just like a brief overview. And then if you actually visit the website, so if you go there, I also included sort of like the average sentiment score. So this is just the aggregate of what CNN is producing up until a certain date. And if you go to, for example, American Conservative, they have more of a sort of positive outlook on news. And again, we start talking about like their political agendas, but also about how they're using news and the media to kind of control you, especially during the pandemic, because there's a lot of, pushback with sort of what your rights are and so forth. And the news, in a sense, is like, right wing is kind of pro with certain things and reopening the economy. You'll see more on the left side. It's a little bit more about adhering to certain laws that are being in place, like the safer at home laws and so forth. And so all these kind of things I was trying to sort of investigate. And then you could sort of navigate through and you'll see exactly what headline was scraped and the score. And this is a sort of live project where I hope to sort of date each update of the scores so that we can have a sequence or a chronology of how things have been changing in parallel with the pandemic. As things start to ease up, we'll see how the news outlets are changing in relation to all these things that are occurring. And yeah, so if you guys want to check out, or if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
We're still seeing the Adobe Portfolio website. Maybe you need to change windows for us to see your website.
Oh, shoot. Do you guys see anything now?
We're still on your page of Adobe Portfolio, but not the separate website that you coded.
Sorry, 1 second.
While we're switching over, Amelia says, surrealist, the dream painting version without the manipulation. She loves it.
What do you guys see now? Is it art steps or?
No, we're still seeing Adobe Portfolio, at least on my screen. I don't know what others are seeing.
One second.
And Javier says, I'm not familiar with your work, Stephen, but I really enjoy the idea of digital being broken down to imperfection. After that, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Do you guys see anything now? I mean, I've closed all my windows.
See you.
Yeah, you stopped screen sharing.
Oh, shoot.
And Stephen, while we're getting this together, Andy says, Stephen, I love this data visualization project. If you're not already familiar with Edward Tuft's books, he thinks you'll dig them.
Definitely. I miss you guys. Andy, I miss you. And I noticed Marissa was on here too, so I miss all you. So let me see. What do you guys see now? I mean,
now we're seeing your website, the part that you coded. So
okay.
kind of just go over that part again.
Yeah, sure. So again, so back to that. So yeah, so basically you could kind of run through each of the swatches and you'll see the score and what the headline that was scraped. So even a pandemic can't kill threat inflation, but it's super negative for that. And again, we get an aggregate of the scores, and my hopes is to create a timestamp for each of these so that we could see the sequence or the chronology of, you know, as it runs through in parallel with the pandemic, and as we start to ease things off, see how news, the different news outlets are sort of responding to that. But yeah, and again, I guess if you guys saw the space, and here's my other space, just in case you didn't get to see it. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. And I'd like to, I guess, move on to Tiffany.
Thanks so much, Steven. It's awesome.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. You can go to my, oh, okay, what happened? You can enter through the back door to go to my space in the gallery, which is not happening. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist who I work in all types of mediums, but for this show specifically, I've made 3 oil paintings due to the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I naturally shifted my interest to painting. And art making, especially painting, has been a therapeutic tool for me, and it became a tool for me to manifest what dictates my headspace, and by making it tangible, it became like a healing process. And so this project allowed me to weigh the situation outward and spill out all the emotional burden, and basically provided me the space to like think and feel. And so I'm going to move on to the website. So the ambiguity of the form and the environment that these paintings create, it creates a sense of temporality that's still grounded in the real physical space and a mental space. And it's in the conversation with other works, you can see at the bottom of the website here. And I've been exploring all sorts of medium like clay, plaster, fabric, sound, and they're all in installation-based production. My work as a whole creates a dialogue around the limitation of the body and the absence and the presence of it. It deals with ephemerality of the physical body through either the abstraction of the form itself or the space it occupies. Yeah, I don't know. So my computer froze. I can't move my mouse. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on.
Do you want us to pull something up for you? But also there's a question from Amelia
Yeah,
Jones.
yeah. Tiffany, Amelia asked while we're, and it would be neat to scroll down and see these paintings again on your site. But Amelia asked, Tiffany,
can someone take over the screen because it just froze.
Oh, okay. Could somebody take over for Tiffany? Chandler, do you mind? And while we're getting this together, Amelia asked Tiffany, this is such an interesting direction compared to your Lyndhurst work. Haunting, you found other ways of evoking bodily movement. And Javier says, question, why the choice of body sculpture?
In the painting?
I assume so. Why the choice of body sculpture?
I guess most of my inspiration comes from my own body as my way of interacting with the material itself. And that's how I feel connected to what I'm working with. And that's a way for me to like project what's in my headspace and what's like dictating my like mental space.
Okay, to elaborate on that, Jennifer West asks, hi Tiffany, congratulations. Interesting to see your work in painting. Can you talk about the relationship between your body molds and the images?
I guess the body mold is a literal like transference of my physical body that I put outside to the public, which then interacts without my physical presence. But these paintings are more of my like representation of like the different emotions and feelings that turns into an abstract form that could be a bodily form, but it's abstracted enough so that the ambiguity brings out like an ephemerality to the body, which is what my other like sculptural work is about.
Great answer. And Andy Campbell asks, Tiffany, I noticed that in the data attached to the big blue painting, and maybe we could scroll to focus on that, that is something like 30 by 40 inches. But in the digital gallery, it looks much bigger than that. Any particular reason for the size shift? These paintings are really quite special.
I just took advantage of the fact that we have a virtual gallery space and I can manipulate it however I want so that it visually fits the space better. And I always wanted to do like a painting that fills the entire wall. I just didn't have enough money to buy a canvas that big or had the space that big enough to install a painting that large. So I'm glad we shifted to a virtual gallery in that sense.
Much less expensive for canvas. Javier replies that paintings look more like inward views as opposed to the body forms. But John Wingo asks, hey Tiffany, your moldings have a performative aspect to them. How did performance influence your paintings?
I guess the whole act of painting is performative in a sense because I never plan out my painting. I just kind of start painting and just go with the flow. And so that whole action of me painting from like start to finish is a performative action because I'm just like projecting what is internalized. So I'm not really like planning ahead.
Okay, very good. And Karen Leibowitz opines, I see a strong relationship to the cast through the gestures. The figures here also look like there's a metamorphosis of sorts, a contortion of the body to try to transcend.
Mm-hmm. Was that a question? I'm sorry.
No, it's a statement, but do you have any opinion about that?
Yeah, I guess I try to abstract the form, whether it's the abstraction of the form itself or the space itself, so that there's like an ambiguity of what the form is or where the form is placed, like where it is. And yeah, I guess that's why it has a transcendental quality to it, because you don't know what you're looking at.
Right, she mentions that somebody asked about the relationship. Very good.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chandler.
Thanks a lot, Tiffany. Jovi Schnell says, congratulations, everyone. Take care and stay strong. Love and kisses, Jovi. Thanks, Jovi.
Okay. Oh, do you guys see this?
Yeah, we're in art steps now on your screen.
All right. Thanks, Tiffany. What's up, guys? I'm Larry. Thanks for sticking along so far. I know it's been quite long, but we almost done here. Okay, thanks, guys. I'm Larry. I'm going to be presenting 2 drawings today. These are 2 drawings I've been working on for this show. There's these multimedia kind of drawings where I take these canvases and I paint them black first, and I collage these 4-inch diameter coasters onto the surface of the canvas. And then I draw with charcoal and graphite onto the individual coasters, where I create these images that are kind of broken apart and fractaled, and where I would have to, go into the individual coasters and make a whole image through the individual pieces. We'll start with this drawing first. I try to make these pieces as accurate to kind of life size as possible. So this one is 36 by 72 inches, and it's a diptych. So there's two canvases put together where it's 36 by 48 canvases put together, creating a whole image. This piece is called Familial Fractals. It's an image of my sister actually being held by my grandpa and my grandma on the right there. I came across this image and it kind of stood out to me because that's actually my father's father. So my grandpa on my father's side, and then my grandma is actually my mother's mother. So it was from two different sides of my family. And that's something I've never experienced before. I've never seen them together in the same place, but this is a picture of my sister, and I kind of, put myself in my sister's position to see this kind of relationship happen that I've never really seen in my life. But I've seen in, it's happened, but I've never remembered them together in the same place, and it's always been two different worlds for me. But what really stood out was my grandpa here passed away when I was in high school, and I've never been able to get that relationship with him like I wanted. And my grandma here has pretty severe Alzheimer's right now, so she doesn't know who I am, and it's kind of been this slow progression of slowly losing that kind of relationship I've had with her. And it's been like when I've grown up and like realized the importance of kind of familial relationships and inherited experience, it was kind of too late at that point to really have these relationships with these two individuals. So it was an interesting picture that really stood out to me, and I knew once I saw it, I kind of had to do something with it. This is titled Familial Fractals, if I didn't say that already. But this process of kind of breaking up the image into two and then further breaking up it into these individual pieces of coasters was a way for me to kind of represent that familial shattered relationship with these two individuals through my sister in this picture. Yeah, so that's kind of the thinking behind this piece. And it was a very therapeutic way to kind of deal with those feelings. And I use that same process into this second piece that I want to show you guys. It's a little smaller. It's 12 by 36. So it's a triptych this time. Again, breaking up images into thirds. And then these are 12 by 12 square canvases put together. This was done when the quarantine really started hitting us. And like all of us, I was trying to find ways to kind of respond to what we were all dealing with through my art. Maybe in this case, a little more literal, This piece is called Culprit. I was thinking a lot about just how little we know and the helplessness we feel in these kinds of situations, Like I was thinking about where this came from and how our lives kind of suddenly flipped upside down in a matter of seconds. And I was thinking about the culprit or the causes of this pandemic. If you look at these individual canvases by themselves, the first one is a picture of a wet market. I don't know if you can get closer, but it's a picture of a wet market of a man holding up a bat. The second one is Dr. Lee. If you guys aren't familiar with this story, it's Dr. Lee is the one of the first whistleblowers of this pandemic, and he tried to warn everybody of COVID-19, but then, the Chinese government shut him down and arrested him for spreading false rumors, and soon he passed away himself from COVID-19. So it was just like, maybe the cause was kind of our response to our society and government's response to how we dealt with this pandemic and the loss of, of someone like Dr. Lee, who tried to warn us about this beforehand. And the third one is a pangolin, which a lot of people think is the primary reason for this zootonic kind of jump to a human from an animal virus jump and the responsible kind of culprit. So a lot, like 3 different options, and just a lot of thoughts in my head about, you know, where this actually came from and how do I actually think about this. And I think a lot of us feel this helplessness of not being able to see the full picture of this situation, and this process of masking each image with this kind of decorative pattern, but also fragmenting the image is a way for me to kind of process that in an aesthetic of not being able to see the full picture, whether it's about familial relationships or kind of a more global pandemic. Yes, that is the best ways I can describe these. But yeah, if you guys want to see more, you know, check out our website. Chandler and Steven did a great job in designing these, and I have these in more details with some kind of quotes from my manifesto that you guys can read. And yeah, check out my...
Yeah, and Larry, could you just stop right here on culprit, because it was so pixelated in the virtual space. It might be nice for people to really take it in. And also, let me ask you, Amelia has a comment, Amelia Jones. I don't know if you have an answer, if you want to pursue this further,
sure.
Given this nice image. She asks, or states, Larry, the method is compelling because it distances us, like we're viewing through glass blocks or trying to discern a pixelated image.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, that's definitely, you know, what I was thinking, especially with my grandparents. There was always this distance, and I've never felt close to them. And when I wanted to feel close to them, it was already too late because of kind of, you know, the limitations of the human body that deteriorate over time. And I would never be able to kind of really appreciate that now that they're kind of gone, whether it's mentally or physically. And with the COVID thing, it's an obvious distance where I'll never be able to know the full situation of, you know, the world. So this process is definitely a way of distancing myself and the viewer from the subject matter.
Would you mind scrolling to that other picture of your grandparents? Because this is another comment. I don't know if you want to comment on the comment, but they ask, Larry, I couldn't put into words myself, but it does feel remarkable to have both a paternal and a maternal grandparent in the same photo. At the risk of sounding creepy, I think it would be super interesting to see you talk through your old family photos, since they are such a big source of inspiration for you in your work.
Yeah, no, it's not creepy. It's definitely like, you know, we have a lot of photographers here, and I really appreciate the art of photography. And a lot of what I draw from is from photography. It's the way of, you know, getting this memory from the past, almost like, you know, a sort of time travel that we're able to do with this new technology. And it's, and this picture is something that really stood out to me because it's from a maternal and a father, paternal, is that paternal? I have no idea. But, you know, it's from 2 different sides of my family, one from my father, one from my mother. And that's something I've never seen before, but that's something I can only know because of this wonder we have of photography. So I'm always obsessed with bothering my parents of sending me pictures of, you know, old pictures, but they're always, you know, very nice, and they spend the time to send me old stuff all the time. So yeah.
Well, Andrew Chow says, amazing work, Larry. Love how you use art as a kind of therapy for your thoughts. But I do have another question from Justin. He asks a question. Larry, on top of being a fantastic visual artist, a lot of people also know you're a prominent movement artist or dancer. I didn't know that, Larry. I know you're familiar with multimedia art, referencing your Portals piece. With that said, can you discuss your thoughts and or plans on multimedia art forms, and if you ever plan to use dance in your visual pieces?
Hi, Justin. Justin's my dance friend. You know what? That's something that I always think to myself too, and everyone always asks me that. And it's like, I find it very hard to, you know, see the 2 together, because dance is so kind of just not heavy for me. You know, I feel like a lot of my art is very heavy in terms, it deals with my personal kind of situations and feelings, and when I dance, that's kind of a step away from that, where I don't have to think about, you know, my identity. When I think a lot of people think of dance, dance can be a very, deep self-expression, but to me, it's a way of escaping that kind of thought madness in your mind sometimes. So, sometimes I try to not think about that, but also there is this romantic kind of feeling that I do want to meld the two someday and see like a dance performance in a gallery setting. And, I've been experimenting a lot with animations and dance, and that's something I want to work on more. But, I feel like a lot of people are always pushing me to that, and I feel like that's something I shouldn't ignore, and I should definitely consider in the future. Thanks, Justin.
Well, thank you, Larry. You have a lot of nice congrats in the Q&A. You guys, thanks for the Q&A. Please keep them coming. It's nice to slow down a little bit. And to end with, Javier, though, says, visually very lovely, and you're a lucky young artist. He can't wait to see more, which I think is, we all think about all you guys. But thanks a lot, Larry.
Appreciate it so much. All right, I'm going to pass it on to the wonderful Yuchen. Thanks, y'all.
Hello, everyone. I'm a cross-cultural designer focusing on digital media and visual design. I have been spending most of my life in New York City, Los Angeles, and China. I'm currently a senior at the University of Southern California, majoring in art. I love the enthusiasm in New York City, the creative atmosphere in LA, and reminiscing about my roots in China. I'm looking forward to incorporating different elements and focusing on every minor details in my artwork. So the first work I want to show you is a short film about 5 minutes. I want to use the transition as a technique to help me connect closer with the audience and emphasize the moment of happiness and depression. I plan to start in a dark and restrained atmosphere and gradually transfer it into a bright, vivid, and dreamy environment. The dark and restrained atmosphere represents the confined and limited environment we're going through right now. And the bright, dreamy environment suggests the beautiful life after the pandemic. I will now play my film. The conceptual and experimenting elements in this film are actually inspired by the avant-garde films I have recently learned. I also plan to explore more about film when I graduate, so I think it will be a great opportunity for me to include this in my show.
Thank you very much. I have my second project to show.
Yuchen, before we go to the next one, that was excellent. And Amelia has a question for you. She asked, that sparkler in the dark after the gas burners, just fantastic images. Can you explain the connection with Beverly Hills and the natural imagery?
Oh, there is no certain connection between them, but they're all from my personal memories. So it's kind of personal, important to me.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much for watching the film. The second work that I want to introduce to you is a photography series. As a cross-cultural artist from China, I had a very special education background in Chinese public school. Art was my relaxation and escape from the strict school rules and heavy schoolwork. I had a lot of colorful dreams and wild imaginations throughout my childhood. In order to record these intriguing dreams and imaginations, I started to make conceptual color drawings and photography to imitate the dreamy scenarios. And these are some of my other works. The first one is a digital poster inspired by Russian constructivism. And this is the installation about dream. And these are some Chinese elements drawing. Thank you very much.
That's very interesting. Yuchen, Javier's comments, he wasn't going to say, he was going to say that LA Noir and some Pulp Fiction kind of thing, but then he liked how you threw in a curve the lovely thoughts of USC in our school. And I don't know if you want to comment, you made a lot of that video you made in quarantine in China, is that correct?
Yeah.
Was the USC fondness a little bit about musing about your time here in lieu of being here?
I think my memories in USC is very valuable to me. So I think when I was under the quarantine, I always think about the past memory I had when I was in USC and the fun I had with people in Santa Monica Pier. So I thought these are all great memories that support me to carry on and to do more things in the future. So I hope these expectations can help me and maybe help other people to help them to become more motivated when the pandemic ends.
That's great, Yuchen. Thanks so much. Amelia says the drawings are amazing, and Javier says lovely. Thank you so much.
And next, I will introduce Ellie to you.
Everyone, thank you for waiting. I'm the last person, and I am Ellie Yu, and this is my webpage, and this is my first work. Before I go into my artwork, I want to explain about my relationship with art. So I've been always finding answers and talking with my artworks, and I've been having so much issue of having sorry, I'm really nervous right now. Sorry. So art kind of became mystery from like last semester, and I was always finding a way to communicate with my artworks. And as a result, I just let my heart to speak of it, and I just went through it. And I got to a point where, you know, sometimes you want to escape from art and everything, but I couldn't because I really needed it. One night, I felt like I was gonna die if I don't paint. So I made 8 drawings just randomly in the midnight, and that was it. I felt like, okay, I really have to continue it. And that was the way of me finding answers to myself. And that's how I live. So this drawing was continuation of that. It's a really big drawing. It's 144 inch by 42 inch. I don't consider this as a finished artwork. It could be developed in the future. The reason why I couldn't really finish this was because pandemic happened and I couldn't really hang this work in my apartment. And I couldn't make more out of it. So, but before I done that, I figured out this painting was glowing through the blue lights, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that really continued on what I wanted to contribute through art, which is making people question about artwork and find their own answers. And hopefully you find their hope. So that's me over there. So that's the scale of the work. That's some details. And after that work, I also have these, which is also about communication and what I was feeling in that moment. This is without the light. And so pandemic happened and I stopped painting and I kind of move on to digital arts, or for this class, I focus on video. So I think I'm gonna share that. Oops. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with this.
We're not seeing the video, Ellie.
What? Can you guys see it right now?
Now we see your desktop. Make the video largest.
Can you guys see it right now? Because I see it large.
No, it's just still the desktop. There might be a slight glitch, but give it a second and try again.
Can you guys see it?
There we go.
Yay.
And move the cursor away from the menu bar, Ellie. So, okay, there.
that was it. Yeah, that's all I have for that. And maybe if you guys want to see more of my work, please check my website. I'm trying to show. Do you guys see my, oops. I'm so sorry, I'm having not a good. Sorry, sorry about that.
While you're getting that together, we have a couple of comments here. I don't know if you want to comment about the video. Amelia says that it's stunning and the pacing is elegiac, one of her favorite words. The imagery was repetitive, looping in the right way. And Andy asks, the video has kind of a diaristic quality. Time seems to be both compressed and extended, slowing down. Your footage has a hand in this, but so do the recurring views out the window. How did you approach editing this?
I guess when I first filmed this, I knew what I wanted to do with the door and the windows, because I guess during pandemic, everyone couldn't go out. I wanted to go through my window, like through my door, but that's not possible. And I'll just look at the window. And I think that's how I connect the idea of the window reflections and the door and my foot and everything. So I did have like a idea of what was making connections in my head when I was doing that.
Amelia also opines, Monet's water lilies, talking about your drawings, epic cinematic sky, pretty dramatic with that scale, and the vertical works are reminiscent of Chinese vertical landscapes. I don't know if you have an opinion about that.
I do really love Monet. Monet's one of my favorite artists, and thank you for thinking about Monet, looking at my thing. I'll love to hear that.
Okay, great. And Javier says, Ellie, I feel really bad that he was not able to teach you more advanced printmaking, although there's still a chance because he'll be back in the fall. He still thinks the experimental works you were making, that you're working on, would be a great avenue to make art.
Thank you. And these three are also actually what I made for Javier's class. It is a digital collage also related to pandemic. It's an abstract words, phrase, images that I was feeling in that moment. If you guys want to look more to it, I recommend going into my Instagram or a website that I have. I'm still working on my websites, but if you guys see more works, I have a lot. And I think I'll leave it to Keith from now. Thank you for listening.
Well, great. You guys, maybe we could go to the grid. I know that there are a few more questions. We're so proud of you all, you guys. Like, everybody's worked so hard, not just in this class, but for your all 4 years here at USC Roski. It's just been incredible and just a fun way, an exciting way to celebrate, despite the pandemic, your incredible work. I know we have some questions just in general. Domia's folk asked a question for Domia. Domia, how did you transfer your image on the fabric? And you guys, please, if you have other questions to ask the gang, please just type them in, and I'll try to ask everyone. But Domia, do you have a question, an answer for your folk?
Yeah. So the process on the cyanotype, usually it comes in like, you can like, it's like liquid, it's a chemical base that you mix together and it becomes light sensitive, and then you can put it on any absorbent. You can put it on a t-shirt or on fabric, on wood, different materials. I used to like try it out when I was like back in high school, when I used to do these processes a lot. And then you just expose it to sun. I can actually show you on my website kind of me doing it. That's also like right behind me as well, if you can see it. I'll show you in a second. But how do I do this right? Hold on. go. Yeah, so on my website, it kind of shows, it goes through the process. These are like them in their full glory. But yeah, I did like body prints, and then I made, so this is like me while I'm exposing it. And these are the texts. I took like small words from everybody's list that I collected. I collected probably over 50 lists from like 50 people, and took words from their list of their fears and of their things that they're grateful for. And at first I was going to have them as separate works, but then I decided to combine them because a lot of the things that were on people's list that they were grateful for were things that people feared. And so I thought that that kind of crossover was a really interesting dynamic and kind of complicated it a bit more. And so I painted all the text onto these transparencies, and then laid on it and exposed it in the sun. And then I also have it here. Hold on, let me get my light fixed. But yeah, so they're like 7 feet tall, 5 feet, they're like 4 feet wide. And so you can see how that the print is still there. You can still kind of see the text, and over time it will fade, like it won't stay forever unless it's like super stark. But it's kind of like the, you know, ephemerality of it that I really like this process. But yeah.
Master
Domia, how long?
Domia, Master Printmaker Javier asks, what were the time exposures in the sun?
I was supposed to set a timer, but then I didn't. I just ended up getting a sunburn. So they're usually like, it was like full sun. So it could have been 15 minutes. I was probably out there for 20 just because I wanted to make sure. I was kind of doing it all, like trying to get everything on there and then jump on it before it could expose to the sun was an exercise. But it was really a very like body, you know, compromising practice. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. You guys, do you have more questions for our gang? We'd love to answer any and all questions. And fellow students, I don't know if you guys have questions to ask one another, or if you want to talk about creating this epic show.
Just a question for Niki, I think.
Yeah, hey Claire.
There's a question for Niki over here, I think. If that helps.
I don't see it, Claire. Can you ask the question?
Sure, it says, Niki, can you explain how you make the different layers on the painting on the wall? How many layers is it?
So for my work on the wall, it's different layers on different spots. I don't know, many layers, because I had to like, some parts I primed, some parts I didn't prime. I used textures under. So it's different layers. I use different techniques. I did image transfer and some other just methods to put my images on, and I sewed and I used fabric. So there is multiple layers on the wall right now, with the gold, of course.
That's wonderful. Do you guys have other questions or comments, or and you guys, I don't know if you guys want to comment, Capstone students, about creating this show during the pandemic and your experience doing it?
I think Andrew has a question about that.
Okay, for some reason I'm not seeing these things. Do you want to ask it, please, Christian?
Yeah, sorry. I think I got a little background with him. So he asked, how did work get placed in the virtual gallery? And maybe Chandler or Steven can answer that.
I'll take it. So the virtual gallery space is through a software called Art Steps. So Steven and I were in charge of kind of building the whole gallery as a template. And then everyone was enabled to go in and drop their images as either images or, like I said, the video function wasn't working too well, or 3D files. And so we were able to place it specifically in the space. and we were able to add frames to it and scale it, different dimensions. You know, some like gravity things don't work, like we could have things floating in space or going through the ground. But it was a big collaborative effort for everyone to kind of move into the space essentially around the same time. And so it was also totally customizable for, like, specifically Stephen wanted a little room where you could see all 3 paintings. So we were able to build, you know, dimensionally a little room for his work to take place in. So it was really almost kind of freeing with all of the COVID mess. We were able to, you know, visualize and create this entire gallery space almost custom to our art, as opposed to trying to fit our art within the space, depending on the context of the person. So yes, it was all done individually and tweaked by some people that knew the software a little bit better, but it was a big group installation.
Amelia says, Chandler, kudos for working on the virtual space. It's truly impressive. And Erica, I have another question for you from, let me see it. It was right here, everything. Oh, Javier asked, Chandler, besides being a rock star and moving on, will you still make art?
Oh yeah, I will never stop making art. There is a section on all of our web pages. We have manifestos, and so that's definitely like the key part of my manifesto. Like I say multiple times, art is my breath, and art is all of these different analogies to me. And no matter what I'm doing, whether it's creative or not, hopefully always creative job-wise. But yeah, whatever I'm not fulfilled by in an office or in a space or at a residency, I can always be doing just on my own time, and art will definitely always be something I do.
Excellent, thank you so much. Kian asks a question for Niki. Niki, what does the poem on your wall mean to you?
Sorry, can you repeat the?
Kian asks, what does the poem on your wall mean to you?
The work on the wall?
The poem.
Oh, the poem. So the poem's history is that I didn't pick a specific poem myself when I went to like open the book, you know, and I didn't say, oh, I'm going to write this poem. Usually with this poet, his name is Hafiz, as I said, you just kind of like make a wish. It's not like you don't open a fortune, you know, you just open his poetry, and then whatever page it lands on, it's kind of like, it kind of resonates with people almost all the time. So when I was trying to do my calligraphy, I was reading like some of the poetry. It's also the Persian New Year in March. So I picked one of the poems that I actually opened that day, and I just, it resonated like with what I'm going through. So that's basically it. That's why it's on the wall.
Thanks a lot, Niki. Denise Cook says, enjoyed the exhibit, very talented artist. Thanks so much, Denise. Karen Leibowitz says, congratulations, Capstone class. Marissa has a specific question for Domia. She asks, Domia, it's so nice to see these cyan types. I'm so looking forward to having a better look at your site. Interesting to think about this work with your photo practice. I guess that's a comment, but I don't know if you want to comment about that.
Sure. I think like I've been like working with cyanotypes and alternative processes since like high school. So like during when the pandemic started, and I was kind of struggling, I don't know why, but like with making photographs and taking pictures. So I kind of was like, okay, what else that I want to do? I remember I emailed you. I was like, Keith, I want to learn how to paint. I was just trying to explore, and I was like, you know, wanting to kind of resort to like, I was like, oh, like what kind of generated my interest like back then, like when I was younger, and, you know, alternative processes and cyanotypes, and really being able to use my sun and exposure and kind of like, you know, think of like a photograph differently. So going back to that practice, but I actually have a question for Caleb, since, you know, he's really on. What'd you say?
Nothing. What is it?
I wanted you to talk more about how gesture and repetition is incorporated in your photographs and in your practice.
Okay. I'll answer that. So I'll also bring up them as well. Hold on just a second. So specifically with these two, and then the ones here, I think growing up, church was always on Sunday, Bible study was always on Wednesday. So ultimately there was a cycle that was created. And if you do it for 18, 17 years, it kind of gets numbing. So that's immediately where I like kind of located the act of repetition, kind of wanted to apply that to my work. When it comes to gesture, I think I was studying a picture of my dad a while, his pastoral portraits, and he kind of had this stately stance about him. And I think in my recreations or self-portraits, I kind of wanted to mimic that stance or mimic some of the bodily movements he might have done in the pulpit. I'll stop sharing my screen, but that's to answer your question.
Amazing, Caleb. Thanks so much. Andy opines, thank you, Roski, Capstone class of 2020. I know that this is not how you or we imagined your final months of your time at USC. To that point, I am amazed at your resilience and strength and look forward to keeping up with your varied practices. We will miss you all and can't wait to celebrate your accomplishments one day in person. Thanks a lot, Andy, for that. And also, you guys, I just want to remind everybody that the website's going to be up forever. That has all the web pages that talk about their work specifically for this show and then some. And they all have connections to everybody's real website with all of their work. And so there's plenty of opportunity to go down the rabbit hole to look at everybody's work in this. Amelia asks, Caleb, I assume you know Kinde Wiley's work. While your pictures are photographic, they remind me of Wiley's epic paintings.
Yeah, I definitely have gotten that a lot, specifically with one lace one that I've done recently. And I've studied a lot of his paintings for a while. And me and Domia have this joke that we are going to be painters in our next life. So that's very intentional with our photography practices. But yeah, I'm definitely like looking at his work to draw inspiration on how to better frame Black narratives in contemporary society.
Excellent, Caleb. Thanks a lot. And Javier asks a question for Antonio. He asks, Antonio, I feel your sculptural work is just exquisite. I truly enjoy how you're not afraid to create. Your work is a bit of short of impressive at your age. This means it will be even better going on. Thanks a lot, Javier. But then Javier, he has a question for Claire, and he asks, Claire, where is your artwork going?
I mean, just in general, or like now, I guess, I don't know. I mean, the project I've presented here is one that can grow iteratively in perpetuity if I wanted. And then I'm also finalizing work for my solo show that was postponed when we all went home from school early. So that should be in the fall, I think. No dates yet. Same for Domia and Caleb. We have those coming up at some point. So it's continuing a lot of themes that I've already been exploring in terms of personal space, private space, personal issues, documentation, repetition, those buzzwords that I threw around earlier.
And then Javier, Antonio, Javier asked that you please respond to his comment from before.
Thank you.
I think he wants you to answer the same. I think he wants you to answer the same question that he just gave Claire. Like, where is your artwork going?
Okay. I was like, where's the question? So I don't know. I think for myself, I tend to take my art definitely one day at a time. I do think though that I will spend a long time to work on my art. So a lot of times, like the things I'm thinking about right now or the type of work I want to make right now actually doesn't usually get made until later. I mean, I have like drawings in a sketchbook that are like 2, 3, 4 years old, and I'll be like, I think it's not ready yet. And I think it's kind of, sometimes I think I need an idea to bake a little bit more before I can execute it. But in terms of like where I'm going next, I don't know. I mean, I definitely want to try to really push myself, and I would like to apply to like grad school and stuff like that. But in terms of like the content of my art, I think I just want to push more of like the ideas of like what it is to kind of enjoy small moments, or what it means to be present, and that kind of thing. I think I like to make a lot of work that kind of grapples with nostalgia and memory. So I think I would just like to make more work that kind of challenges like ideas of like what is seemingly like small and maybe unimportant emotions, but point out like the importance of that.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Antonio. And Javier has a question for Rebekah. Are you working large scale as your norm? Is this the way you will be working?
Well, right now, it's not large scale because obviously it's like limited on what I have and what I can do. But since my Lyndhurst show and that size and how I was working pretty big on like wood panels instead of canvas is definitely something that I am attracted to. So yeah, I mean, I always aim to work as big as I can depending on storage space and working space.
Okay, very good. And Erica Schultz has a question for Michael. She asks, Michael, I believe you mentioned that one of your pieces was made with fabric. How did you choose that medium? And did you color or paint over the fabric?
Cool. Thanks, Erica. No, I didn't paint over the fabric. I chose it because I love that lace has this like delicate nature to it. It's vulnerable. Also that it kind of encompasses like the full spectrum of human emotion. You can wear lace to a funeral, you can wear it to a wedding. So I kind of like that dichotomy. And yeah, that's about it. Let me, I can, here's it a little bit up close. You can kind of see there. But yeah, thanks for the question.
Okay, very good. And oh, and he missed the show. You wanted to see the image, so Javier did. So thanks for showing that. Amelia said that she was so impressed with this work. Thank you, and good luck moving into this crazy world. Thank you for sharing your work tonight. She has to go, but I hope to hear about your flash careers in the future. Stay in touch with Roski. Thanks so much, Amelia. John Wingo says, congrats on the show, everyone. I love how you all adopted the changing world around you and within you, and he misses seeing you guys in the lab. Cause for Elegance says, amazing talent, so proud of all the students and their hard work. Who are some of their favorite artists? And then we have one question after this. So do you guys want to chime in? Who are some of your favorite artists?
I love Mark Bradford. Just his way of using collage and, collage that with found objects that have like cultural significance and creating these kind of very abstract but beautiful landscapes in his paintings.
Anybody else? Javier hopes that you like Sarah. Richard, Sarah.
Everyone in this class.
At the moment, oh, sorry.
Very good. Yeah, everyone in this class, all my professors, but also Latoya Ruby Frazier, Carrie Mae Weems, I got Lorna Simpson, Adrian Piper, Mark Bradford. I mean, I have like a really long list. Anna Mendieta, all the, Josovia Gary, good.
Amazing ones. Anybody else? Okay, guys, so Layla Hassel asks, congrats guys, love seeing all your work. This is a general question that anybody can answer, but do any of you feel like the quarantine expanded the way you feel and think about creating art compared to how you would usually work? Do you guys feel you've learned a new practice that could contribute to future works? Good question.
I think pandemic definitely gave people time to think more. In my case, I couldn't really sleep, so in the nighttime, I'll just think about art and myself, and that definitely expanded to an idea of creating collages in my phone. So yeah, it's definitely something moving forwards.
I do a lot of work in digital space, so I was really not like relieved that this happened, but it was a way that could like test all of us and our capabilities using digital platforms. So I thought it was really cool that everyone kind of was tested in that way, and it can be used hopefully as a way for the future. So people can have these experiences digitally, even if they can't attend them in real life. Hopefully the circumstances aren't like what we're going through right now, but that, yeah, I just thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, I also found a really cool push and pull between, you know, all of the restraints that we had due to like the pandemic. Like we lost our studio spaces, we lost some materials, we lost a lot of time, and just maybe even like a track that you were working towards or a body of work was halted or completely altered. And so that just felt so hindering, but then also there was just like this crazy freedom that opened up too, like specifically with my body of work, because I never would have been able to fabricate all of these sculptures in the time that I did. But then I was able to completely shift my way of view, being like, okay, if I wasn't actually going to make something in the next couple months in a physical form, you know, how broad does that make my horizons of the digital form? And so it definitely allowed me to kind of hone in and fine tune some like digital skills that I had. And so that was really rewarding and freeing and kind of like opening to a new world, while also this like way of working that I was working in, very physical, very studio based, very material based, was kind of shut down. So it was like a interesting dichotomy between the two.
I agree with that. I was also just going to add, for me, I think there was also something about being divorced from the physical university and having that university atmosphere eliminated was kind of like looking into the future and seeing how we would kind of work on our own if we do decide to be like full-time practicing artists. And for me, going through that and then also losing my job and having all this free time, it was like, oh my God, this is like a whole new way to think and work. And it was, yeah, very freeing is I think the word to use. Cause yeah, there was just like a total lifestyle change that for me, I became a different artist and I feel like a different artist, and I am thinking about things in broader terms and in different ways. So yeah.
Okay, really good, you guys. So Ruben says, congratulations, everyone. And Javier says, oh my gosh, working in art during the day and teaching art at night made me dull. This break has inspired me to make more art, but I miss teaching. You guys, students, are so awesome. The act of continuing to make work when you have no time or schedule limit impressed him very much. Special class. I have to agree, you guys are incredible. Like, we really enjoyed teaching you all these years and seeing where you've come. And we're so excited to see where you guys are going to go. And this is, I think, truly a very capstone class for your experience here at USC. And honestly, I'm obviously sad about the pandemic and everything that happened. But as we mentioned at the very beginning, instead of seeing this as an obstruction or an obstacle, you guys took it as a challenge, and you really hit it out of the park and experimented and made really amazing works that were so thoughtful and meaningful and moving and great. And I'm super happy that we're going to have a record of this forever, and hopefully the Art Steps Gallery too. I want to give a shout out to everybody who worked so hard on this show. We didn't mention that Michael did the logos and the design of it, so a big shout out for Michael. I want to shout out for Gigi and the social media team. Gigi, who's on the social media team?
It was me, Rebecca, Leah, Michael, and Christian helped facilitate.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And that's going to continue, you guys. I want to mention that we are going to have a couple more shows. As I said at the very beginning of this, there's a space called TZ Projects that's in the old Tashin brick and mortar building in the heart of Los Angeles. And that's going to start May 15th through the end of the month. It's going to be on giant screens, all this great work. And then the STP show that Cooper Union is organizing that has over 60 schools from all around the globe is going to happen. And that's going to be major. And these guys elected to show as a group, their strength in numbers. And so that's really excellent. And so Gigi and social media are going to keep that going. Chandler, we have to give a big shout out for because she really was the architect and engineer of the gallery space and the website, along with Stephen. So we have to give a big shout out to Stephen and Chandler, very much so. And Caleb and Domia really helped with everybody with the photography and all of the making it perfect looking images, and everybody did a little something with this. We had press release written, I think, by Claire and Tiffany. And you know, the strength in numbers, what I'm so proud of, I hope I didn't miss anybody because everybody worked so hard, that you guys all group together and form an alliance that hopefully will last for the rest of your lives, where you have each other's back and you're really supporting one another and what you do and all your art. And it's great. So we hope that people keep going to the website to see even more, reading your manifestos that are so smart, good, and moving, going to the exhibition site and looking around, but also going to your personal websites just to go further into what it is that you're doing and your oeuvre. It's really, really important that was all created within the context of this class. And truly, this has been a great experience for us, I think, as a class, but really a stepping stone for your future. This is the beginning of a new dawn. It's the apocalypse of not the world, not the school, but a transition of your life going into the future where you have a whole wonderful long road ahead of you and many mountains to climb and peaks to hit and challenges to follow. But congratulations, you guys, the class of 2020 USC Roski Capstone, you guys rock. And it's such a pleasure to be your teacher. And I think I speak for all the teachers, both that have been participating tonight and for everybody at Roski USC. Thank you guys. You guys are the models for what it means to teach and how fun and edifying it is to be an instructor with students like you all who are such wonderful models. It makes it all worth it. Thank you. And we're still here, and you guys are still here, and we'll see you guys next week for your commencement celebration. And thank you guys for participating and staying with us all this time. We really appreciate it. So
thank you, Keith. You're the best, and you deserve a big shout out too. Don't sell yourself short. We love you and appreciate all of the work that you've done to help us and encourage us through this crazy uncertain time and give us a little bit of certainty every Tuesday and Thursday night. So thank you for that. If anyone else has any kind words to say to Keith,
thank
speak up now.
Really pushed us. I know we did not make it easy. Of course, we each struggled every week with trying to transition to Zoom and transition to making our work and continue to have as much passion as we did in isolation. But you really, you know, showed out and for us and every single Tuesday and Thursday with the same energy that you had when we were in class, and you really pushed us. And like, I know we are all internally grateful for you pushing us and to really get this done. And I know we're all proud of ourselves and thank you all.
An emotional moment. Oh my gosh, I have the clip, you guys.
Keith had this vision from the start where I think some of us were a little skeptical that we could pull this all together in the time we had, but kind of day in, day out, we had like a very strong, just consistent voice to stick with it, keep our heads up, do the work, and like, look what we did. It's like, I'm impressed of us, but I'm also like super thankful to have him.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I feel like all of us teachers are just passing the baton. I just happen to have the good fortune to get you last. So thanks a lot. But, you know, really, this has been worth it. It's been really wonderful, and edifying is a word that keeps coming up for us tonight, but truly edifying to have you guys as our students. Thank you. Thank you for making Roski rock and doing so well for yourselves in the school. And, you know, part of the teaching is helping you guys help yourselves find your voice in your work, but also hopefully when you bring this critical thinking, talent, acumen, wonderful passion and energy to the world, it really helps the world, because it reminds people that they're alive human beings on this planet. If they're thinking critically about themselves through the inspiration of your art and your design and your creative and critical output, then it helps to make the world a better place. It makes the art world a better place, the design world a better place, and our culture a better place. So thank you so much. And thanks for being great students. So
also, one more thing, Chandler and I just talked this over. We're gonna throw up this recording onto our website under the press section within the next week, probably, depending on when we can get everything. So if you have family and friends that have missed this, or you want to share this with your colleagues, other Roski professors that didn't come on here, please direct them to that, and we'll try to send a follow-up email with everyone that attended this call or at least RSVP'd, so that you have that for the future. So yeah.
Okay, rock stars. I'm going to let the public have their last, the last comments. Javier says, hooray for Roski class of 2020 and awesome. Our very own Antonio says, Lacus is the tag-along word for strength or power. You all represent the spirit of the word. Wait, yes, your courage to persevere is a testament to all of your individual character. Bravo, class of 2020. Ruben 8A says, every generation of artists finding themselves carving out their own niche and creating an artist space to exhibit their own work and vision. I commend you all for carrying on the spirit and doing it in such a virtual sci-fi trekking manner and capturing the work in both a gallery tour and website. Congrats once again, woohoo, and Javier ends it with awesome. Okay, you guys. Take good care. Of course, please stay in touch with all your teachers. We want to move mountains for you. But I'll let you guys, as forever, chillax if you like. And thank you guys. Thank you, audience, for being amazing and participating and being these guys' teachers and supporters and families and friends. And I know we had some outside looky-loos too, some like really important people. So thank you guys. Everybody here is a VIP in my book. Okay, guys, I guess we'll end it, but take care.